All right, hello, hello, hello. How's it going there, Rasmus? How's it going there, Thermite? Good to see you guys. All right, so we're back in the career. We left off here. We got a bunch of stuff up in the mine. We dumped off some coal, so we have 950. That's all right. No. Stand by. So let's see what happened here. I should have more coal. Did I not save this right? Let me look. These should be down here. Okay, they're all here. Okay, the trailer never got moved because of the truck problem. Okay, we got to fix this truck problem and see why that is not. I couldn't release the brakes, so that's what it was. So I got to get the truck fixed so I can release the brakes. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load up the custom game so that we can more easily fix this truck. Because I couldn't get the brakes off the trailer, so I couldn't put it in there. Alright, so let's go ahead and try to get this problem solved here with the truck and the trailer. Alright, let's see. So this system should be a little bit different in here. This here is the hydraulic system here. And then this is the air system here for the valves. This didn't get updated, so I need to fix this. What is up with the hydraulics? Okay, hydraulics is working, so that's fine. That's going to hydraulic PTO. All right, good. So let's go ahead and we'll grab Titus. All right, we need pretty much all of this part here. So this works via essentially the air is coming in from the trailer. It's going to go into this cylinder, which this cylinder here is the what? Air. Why does it say DDD? Anyways, air reservoir tank. That's going to be the brake can. I got to edit that up. Here, let's do this instead. Go to TTIS and try to fix that. All right, air reservoir tank. Brake, air can. All right, good. So that's labeled there. So this is the front end of it. So essentially what's happening here is in the tractor, you're pumping air in, it's going into this tank and it's pressurizing and storing. Then you're metering the valve to let it go into the brake can. And so when you press on the brake, it's opening this valve, allowing air pressure in there, and that's what's dictating how much brake is on, is the pressure in this tank. So the more brake you apply, the more pressure in there, and then it applies more brake pressure like it would IRL. And then when you let off the brake, this blowout valve opens and it lets air out. That's why when you hear a truck, with air brakes, it goes tss when it stops, because it's letting the air pressure out. So that's air reservoir tank. That's brake air can. That's good. So just fixing those labels. All right, TTIS Mark II complete backup. All right. All right, now let's fix the trailer. So this is like the kind of stuff I like, is using the elements of the pressure update to actually make some of the stuff work realistically, so, or at least semi-realistically. You know, the parts are still way too big. Like, you see how big the valves are, but, you know, unless they really go on a miniaturization spree, that's not going to get changed, probably. So that's the old system, likely. That's going back to the brakes. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so this long pipe here, this is so we can attach multiple trailers. So if you look here, we're actually bringing that air out so that it can go back to further trailers. So that's what that's about. And then that's the inbound pipe there. All right. I'm trying to think where this would go. It's got to be on the reservoir side. So we do want to put that space back in there. And then we'll see if we have space for all of this. We might be a little short, but let's see. I can move it if I need to. All right, perfect. That fits. And then hopefully that doesn't bind. And then this tank will go in line here. So essentially the air pressure comes in here from the hose from the tractor, which is making the air pressure. And it goes in a reservoir tank so you can have more air storage. So you have enough for each trailer has its own reservoir tank like it would IRL. And then that reservoir tank, it can continue to go through so you have a stable and equal pressure to all your trailers. And then it lets it out of the common pipe into the brake can, which simulates the brake cans, and that's what's going to run it. So, and then I should have done this already, but let's see. That's lighting, and then this is hydraulic PTO. That's Titus Mark II trailer. All right, let's cut that out. And the other thing we're going to do here is, you know, I'm really happy that they added that overlapping on here. This doesn't really change it too much by one, but we can't really shrink this, but that gives us an extra node if we needed it for something, so that's fine. All right. So this is going to go. All right, and let's look at this here. So we have brake valve. So this is the actual brake valve here. This is the service brakes trailer. Okay, service brakes trailer is going to the variable brake. Okay. Then we have brake can pressure. So the brake can is this one. So we want the pressure off that. Then we have the reservoir pressure. Right there. And then we have the light cord, which I gotta check on this. So the light cord should go out to the light cord from here, from the front, the receptacle, and then that should go like that. All right, good. So that's in. We gotta find the spot where this goes back in here, which is gonna be interesting to find. Okay, it was right there. So right here it will fit. All right there. All right, there we go. So that's now fixed, hopefully. Need to do electricity. So we have, there's lighting. And we have the electric connector there. That will go here. to see where the throughput is on this. Where is this throughput? There's one that's going all the way from the front here. All right, it's going there, that's going to there, and then where is that going? That one's going to the back as well, so we can fix that. It'll disappear, but I just want to check it first and get rid of it. All right, so that goes to here, and then we need to go to the lighting there. And then those don't need to be powered. This piston doesn't need none of this needs to be powered. They're all bearings. It's actually the pivots that are doing all the work, which are right where are the pivots? Right here. These are the pivots. So that's doing all the work. And that's for the road railer set up there. All right, good. So that looks good. All right, nice. That looks good. We're going to save it. That's the DT45 TTIS Mark II. DT45 TTIS Mark II. That's DT45 TTIS Mark II. That looks good right there. All right, and then I'm going to add something on here. Might do 3. We'll see. I like to put the capacity of everything so that I can, at a look, know how much the fill is on this stuff. All right, so we'll go there. Okay. Just knock something off my desk. 2, 1, 2. This problem is it's going to be backwards if it's not centered. It's fine. Now it shows us the capacity, so if I forget, I don't have to count it out every time. I just look. All right. Yeah, semi-realistic on a semi-trail. I like that. Did I break the brake? Did I take a break on the brake? Yeah, I broke the brake. How's it going there, Amanda? My brain can't figure out what to add to my engine micro on one composite node space. All right, let's go ahead and we'll do this. So that's saved. Let's go like this. Let's go. All right, good. Okay, you can hear the air pressure building up because the pump is on. I don't know why the pump's on. It's better than the pump not being on, but I don't know why the pump's on. Ideally, I would make it engine-driven. The problem is, I could do it. I have to see if belt-drivens will do back pressure, but it's a lot of piping. So that's the main thing. Is so we have air pressure there. We have plenty of air pressure, and the variable brakes is showing something. I gotta see why that's doing that. Okay, see, we have a negative on that, so I can see why my rear brakes have pressure going to them. See, it's dragging brakes, so I can see why it's dragging brakes. Flow rate, da-da-da. Okay, so that's leaking air out, and that's putting air through there, and this is... See, that's opening the brake valve. The brake valve shouldn't be open, so let's see why that's doing that. Alright, let's make sure these are connected correctly. That is brake valve. That should be the brake valve. This should be blowout valve. Blowout valve. Okay, so let's see why this is doing what it's doing. Alright, so 2 is WS, right? So let's check this. So negative X, again, so when we're pressing the S key, it's going to give us a negative number. We want to then convert that to a positive number so it breaks. So when we press the W key, right, we're trying to go forward. So the number is going to be positive. Negative X is going to be in a negative, which is going to give us a negative brake value, so the brakes come off. That's what that's about. Then we're doing plus Y. Y is going to be the... Y is... What is that? What is Y? Y is the park brake, I believe. Yeah, Y should be the park brake. And then we have it clamped at 0 to 1. And then it's times Z, which is times the brake reservoir amount, which is 11.5 atmospheres is what the small pump can output. All right, that's fine, that's fine. So that goes into the set point. We want the brake can pressure. So this is the set point. That's comparing it to the brake can pressure. So what it's doing is open up the valve to make sure that the brake can pressure is what we're asking it to be. All right. So this is service brakes trailer, brake valve. Okay. So the service brakes is going to take whatever the brake can pressure is, which is Z, and it's going to subtract 1. So it's going to be, let's say it's 11.5. 11.5 minus 1 equals 10.5 divided by max brake pressure, which is 11.5. And that's going to give us a 0.91. So let's see. So let's see. Z minus 1. 11.5 minus 1 equals 10.5 divided by 11.5 equals 91. Okay, so let's say the brake cam pressure is 0, or let's, well, so see the negative 1, to understand why I put a negative 1 in there, right, ambient pressure is 1 atmosphere, right, so it's going to stay at a maximum of 1 atmosphere, and so you want to subtract that atmospheric pressure off, and so you're subtracting off 1 atmosphere, so that when you not applying the brakes, it's still going to show 1 atmosphere. So essentially you're at 11.5, and you're subtracting off the standard atmosphere, which is 1 atmosphere. Then you're dividing it by what the maximum pressure could be, and that's going to give you, if you press the button down to 1, it's going to give you a brake pressure of 91 for variable brakes. Okay, so that's fine. And then that goes over here. Okay, so this is the brake max. So that's the park brake. Yep, that's park brake there. And so it's going to have, if you turn on the parking brake, it's going to click on the max brakes, and that goes to service brakes. That's fine. So if the brake reservoir is less than the spring brake rate, and so essentially what you have on a tractor is you have spring brakes, and so let's say you cut an air line and all the air leaks out, it's gonna, some of that air pressure is needed to keep the parking brake off. And so you're actually adding air to the system to get the parking brake to come off. And so what happens is if we were to, say, lose all our air pressure, the brakes will come on. And this is important because when you disconnect the trailer, right, you want the brakes to come on and stay on. And if the air leaks overnight, you don't want the brakes to come off and it roll down a hill into somebody's house and kill them, right? You want the brakes to come on when you have no air. So as the air leaks out of the system, the trailer is in a safe state, which is brakes hard on, and it's springs holding the brakes on. So like you could park a trailer on a hill and it's not going to come rolling down the hill. The springs are going to keep the brakes on, and you know, so it's not going to roll down and run through somebody's house. All right, so service brakes trailer, that goes out there. That looks good. So one thing where we could be having a problem is the park brake. And so essentially what we're doing is when we evacuate the lines, the park brake's coming on, but that'll be a full 1. So we got to check this and see what's up. All right, so then we have the brake valve. So the brake valve is what allows air to go from the storage tank into the tank that actually dictates the pressure. So we just went through the part here that dictates the pressure. So what it's doing is it's reading the pressure in the brake can, and that's what's applying the brake. It's actually the pressure in the brake can applying the brake for us by actually moving the air where it's supposed to be, right? So then what we do is we're going to meter from the storage tank into the brake tank, and so that's what this is doing. So it's saying, hey, I want maximum braking, so that's going to be a -1, right? Holding the S key down. That's going to then make it a positive. So now it's 1 plus Y. All right, so Y here is, I got to see what this is. What is 31? I got to see what 31 is. I'm having issues with what 31 is. If we can figure out what 31 is, that will be good. All right, we got to find 31. All right, so 31 is the trolley brake. So trolley brake is a trailer brake. And so you pull on this handle and it gives you just trailer. And so this is important. I was driving in winter one time, and one of our box trucks came around the car wash and didn't stop at the stop sign. I'm coming around the corner. Well, then my trailer's going to hit him. But the road's, the parking lot's slippery, so I pull on the trolley brake, and the trailer would slide on the ice, and it would come back around me because it always wants to be behind the trailer. And so you'll get situations where the trailer's trying to come around you. Well, what you want to do is keep driving with the tractor, and you want to put the brakes on just the trailer, and the trailer will come back around you. So 31 is trolley brakes. All right, 31's trolley brakes, so that's what that is. All right, so this is adding trolley. So right there's trolley. So if I have the trolley brake on, it's going to slowly start to add brake. If it's not on, it's going to zero out the brakes. That's fine. So it's taking the This could be part of the... I don't think I have the trolley brake on. This could be part of the problem. No, that's fine. Um, this could be part of the problem here. Because, yeah, this is probably it right here. Because what's happening is we have X, which is a... It's supposed to be the S key, which is a negative value. We need to invert that. And then we're adding a positive value to it. So it's taking... Oh, no, that's right. That's right. Yeah, so negative X would be taking the negative, making it positive. This is adding a positive number. Yeah, that's fine. That works. All right, and then the 0 to 1 is 0, 0, and then the max value is 1 times Z. Z is the reservoir atmosphere pressure. So you're essentially saying when I have maximum braking, I'm asking for maximum reservoir pressure. That goes into the PID. That then comes out of the PID, and we have X, which is the rate out of the PID. 0 is the bottom because 0 breaks. We don't need to go negative. And then Z is the maximum brake valve rate, which is 1. Tractor brake max is going to be 1. So that's, yeah, that's max there. And then when's that trigger? Okay, so that's 11, which I would say is 11 is if I turn the trailer brakes off. So when you push a button in the cab, you're giving air pressure to the trailer, releases the brakes. That's what this is. So that's the park brake for it. Here's the blowout rate, 0.65. That's how fast the valve will go. So essentially it's doing this, and then how quickly the valve opens and closes. So it's how slowly the brakes come on and off. That all looks good. I just have to see what's wrong with it. I've got plenty of these trailers working, but this one's having a problem, so. All right, we have the composite going from here. It's going to go back to the pintle. If we attach 2 trailers, it's going to go to here to the light cord. What's this? That's the seat panel from the lights. So that should be here, I imagine. Yeah, that should be there. Hopper cap. I don't know what that's about. All right, so we should have full brakes on here. All right, variable brake 1. That means the park brake's on. I'm going to release the brakes. Now, because I have no air pressure in the system, that might not take them off. Yep. So let's put some air pressure in here because you have to do this IRL. You have to pump up your brake pressure. Maybe this is working backwards. I gotta see. It could be this park brake problem here. Yeah, see, we have variable brakes of 1. It looks like it could be a park brake problem. I'll test my lights too while I'm at it. Alright, we're not getting lights. Get lights on this. Oh, I haven't plugged it in. Duh. Alright, there's lights. Okay. And then here's air pressure coming on. We can hear air pressure moving. Let's go ahead and release the supply. Alright, so the brakes are coming off, but they're not coming all the way off. There's still 0.2, which I don't know why there's still 0.2 in there, so I gotta read it. And I can hear the air constantly pissing out, so there's something up here. Yeah, I don't know why this valve... Alright, this valve here is at 1. I don't know why that valve's at 1. Yeah, so this valve should be closed. That's why the brakes are on. This valve should be closed because I'm not commanding any brakes. So. Alright, so let's work on that one valve first. That is brake valve. And that's blowout, so brake valve's correct. Alright, we're gonna go through the brake valve here. Alright, so if 11 should be the service brake button, so it should be that red button I pushed on the dash. If 11 is not pressed, it's gonna go park brake max. That's not right. Yeah. If the button is not pressed, it should be park brake max, which then also sends it up to here to do tractor park brake max. Okay, so that's correct. So let's see if there's an issue with this. So let's see, that is light cord. So it could be an issue with reading through the trailer. Just look at that. That's reading the bottom, right? That's going to the bottom. Those should be, that could be it right there. Let's try that. That could be something as simple as that. And then this could be that too. Yeah, it could be this needs electricity as well. I gotta find, there's the hot side. That's the hot side. Should be hot sided. Let's try that. That could be as simple as that. Alright. Alright, so the brake should be filling here. It should not be pissing air out like this, though. Alright, the park brake should come off. What the fuck? Because this valve should be closed. I don't know why it's on. Okay, something's royally fucked up with this. I don't know what it is. I don't want to spend all day on this, but this needs to be fixed. What the hell is this doing? This is frustrating. Make sure that's the right number on the dash. Yep, definitely 11. Fucking stop. Alright, so we have the light cord going back to light cord. Okay. Alright, so that should be reading 11. 11 is the trailer park brake. If the park brake is selected on, that's going to turn on the PID, allowing it to do brake calculations because it doesn't need to just be a 1. If the brake valve is not on, the blowout valve should be a maximum of 1 to let all the air out of the system. And if it's not 11, it should also go to tractor park brake max. Okay. So that looks like that is working, because that should be off. And then we got to look at this part here. This is regular brake action, so it'd be PID. And we've got, let's see. All right, we got PID clamped at 0 and Z. Z is 1 for the max brake. That goes into here. That looks good. And then that should be reading through. So what are the PID values reading? So let's see. Let's do this. I don't want to spend all day on this. I want to get some shit done, but figure this out. I don't need that extra node. I don't know why I did that. It's going to read me out brake valve anyway. Just read the brake valve number. I don't need that either. I can read the thing, so I don't know why I'm doing this. Let's also read the blowout valve, because the blowout valve should be closed. Alright, so this is going to be negative PID. So essentially when the brake is not on, we want the valve to be closed. So when the brake is coming on, the blowout valve should be closed. That's why it's negative. 0 and then Z is the blowout valve will go up to a maximum of 0.65 just so that's not instant and it's slow. That's all that is. And then the maximum blowout of 1 when put the park brake on. Make sure everything's merged. It should be. Come on. I am getting confused by what this is doing here. That's brake reservoir. That's brake reservoir tank pressure. That's brake air can tank pressure. That's brake can pressure. Those two should be fine. Blow valve. And brake valve. I don't get why this isn't working. So we're in a park state right now, so this valve should be closed, and then this valve should be open. But I don't have the cord hooked up, so let's hook the cord up. Alright, so the tank's pressurizing. This one should be closed. Why the hell is this open? And I don't know why the pump's on either. The engine's off. So, do I have infinite electricity on? That could be it right there, causing all my fucking problems. Imagine if that's it. I bet you that's probably it. If that's the problem, I'm gonna be aggravated. Be happy it's done, but... Alright, so now it's not going. Alright, that's right. Nope. Yep, that's right, that's right. Okay, that should be empty. Now it's pissing air though again. This should be closed. The fuck? Alright, we're making some progress at least. This is getting frustrating here. Alright, I had this working with other shit too. I don't know why. Trying to think of what trailers I have that has this done already. I thought this was done on this. Let's try to fix the blowout valve first. Alright, so if 11, which is the channel for shutting off, it's to shut off the park brake. If the park brake is not shut off, it should let out all the air in the system and open the blowout valve. That's fine. Alright, that part's done. Okay. If the switch is not shut off, it should give the... Okay, so this is likely what's causing both of these. Is it is not getting the signal from that. So I think that might be what this is doing. So let's do this. Let's grab a light. We'll paint it something. Okay. And then we need to electrify it. And then we want to make something on here that pretty much here. So it's a brake release, so the brakes are on by default like a real tractor. So if that comes on, the brakes are released. And that way I can trigger that and see if that's actually happening. So alright, so right now the brakes aren't released. Brakes are released, and this is not coming on. So that's what's happening. So the signal's not getting through. So I gotta figure out why the signal's not getting through. Alright, so that's what's happening. Alright, good. So at least we get that figured out. Alright, so here is the cable anchor. It's plugged into the battery. That's fine. These two here I've connected so that it's getting signal through for electrical. And then we've got composites going from this node into this node, which will then connect to this node and pass through. This one here is getting the 2 light cords, so I see everything is connected the way it should be. And then we have the rope connections there. That's connected to... Okay, this one maybe I don't have the electrical connected. Nope, that's the one. Okay. That's the one. So the signal is not getting through. So I gotta see why the hell the signal's not getting through. It looks like it should be. Okay, that is all. Gonna get electricity through here. That's fine. That's the tractor. I could test it through the electrical, but this is all getting electrical, so... Definitely a passage of information problem here because the light's not lighting. So there should be no electricity on this light. Why is there electricity on this light? Why is there electricity on this light? Okay. Should not be any electricity on that light. So let's unhook this. Shouldn't come through the pintle anyway. Alright, let's path the electricity. There shouldn't be any electricity on this light now. Okay, no electricity on the light. That's progress. Should be electricity on the light now. Perfect. Alright. This should be hardwired. Alright, it's not coming up. So this is my issue, is something is up with this where the that signal's not sending through, so I don't want to spend too much fucking time on this, but I'm gonna have to. 48 minutes trying to fix this shit. Let's see. That light cord's directly connected there. We have electricity going through here. We need that. So the electrical's fine. So we have a composite connection problem. So the seat should be going to this panel here. Yep. So the seat goes to this panel. This panel here. What is that? That's engine instrumentation. This one here should go up to the T-TIS panel. Going up to the T-TIS panel right there. That's the brake panel. That's to the light cord, so that's reading out fine. Okay. All right, here's light panel, connect seat to light panel. That needs to go out to the trailer. That's composite signal there, so the composite looks good there. And two light cord brake panel. Okay. All right, that's connected to here. This one here is connected to the bottom one. Okay, that goes down. That should be connected to nothing. That's storage. It's all connected correctly. This here, should be like that. Electricity's good there. I don't get why this isn't working. It's got power. It's not passing the information through on this. Oh, I might figure it out. Let me look. I might figure it out. It's coming up brake panel. It's coming off a different panel. Right here. Brake panel. Right here. That's the problem. Okay. This should loop though, so that should go to the brake panel, but we're not picking up brake panel. Alright, so the light cord goes up to... Shit. Alright, I gotta look at this. The problem is I got a loop, and the main thing is because of the seat. The seat has no input. If they would put a input on the seat, that would fix it. But the problem is they don't have one, so I have to loop the seat into this panel. Then this panel comes up here to the microcontroller. Then it needs to go in the microcontroller and then go out to the brake panel, which then needs to go up and to the light cord here. So I need to pick up the signal off the brake panel there and send it out. So that's where we're having problems. So I gotta figure out a way to do this. So what we want to do is, wherever the brake panel is, light core brake panel, I need to pick the brake panel back up. Alright, so the seat needs to come in. The info needs to go there. And then the brake panel needs to come back up. So where the brake panel receive is, this is looping back through and the brake panel receive. Alright, so this is the brake panel receive right here. And then I need another node probably. That's fine. I'm gonna rework this to add a node. But I have to loop it. Alright, I think I figured it out. What's that? That is brake reservoir pressure, brake valve, air brake pump. Let's put that there for now. Ah, shit, I want to do that. Okay, 2 light cord. So what we're going to have here is so this is going to, I'll show you how the loop works. So it comes in from the seat, goes to the lighting panel because we need to send all the lighting information out to the trailer. And then that goes up and it goes out to the, it picks up a couple signals here and it goes to the brake panel, which is going to show both pressure. And that's where we pick up those 2 signals for the brakes. So this needs to go out to the brake panel. And then it loops back in through the brake panel. And then this goes to the light cord. Alright. So this is the new one, 2 light cord. And let's see if this works. And I might have already done this on the other one. That's why the minor works. And this doesn't. Alright, so that should have electricity now. It does. And then let's see if we get signal. I gotta start the engine for that. We should have light now. Yep, so that's it. It's a looping problem. So we fixed the looping problem. We fixed it. It was obnoxious. All right, so I'm gonna go and grab the road train. What I should do is here, T-TIS. So that is 2526. 2526. All right, I just want to make sure I have the latest model. All right, and then we want to go in here. And I want to add that node back in. So this is going to be composite outboard output 2 light cord. That goes there. And then we need to change the name of one of them. It's 2 light cord / brake panel. That's going to go to brake panel. So it's a hierarchy problem, and it's looping, and that's where we're having problems there. And then the 2 light cord goes from the brake panel. So it's got a loop and a loop, and that's where we're having issues there. All right, and then this here needs to go to there. Need to make sure all the electrical's hooked up here. So this should be powered off of the hot bus, and the reason is for lights. Anything light related needs to be hot bus, which means that it always gets power. The other one here that needs power is, where's that? That's going here. This panel here should be here, but then IRL, it's literally valves. You're letting the air in and out. So we want this always powered. So these buttons, which are simulating our valves, always work to turn on or off the brakes, because putting on and off your park brake, you do not need electricity. You just need to push the valve in, and you're literally letting air through a hose. All right, so that's good. Let's save this. All right, And now this should work. I'm going to spawn in the latest 45, which the 45 didn't really change anything, so we should be able to... I'm going to go test this out in this career game. So yeah, that took a long time to fix that small problem I had, but I haven't touched it like... I think it was 2023 is when I kind of did this T-test. And so, like, you see, some of the vehicles were working, some weren't, so... All right, perfect. All right, let's go test this out. I don't have a tractor, do I? Let's quickly fly in the mountain and see what I have for vehicles. I don't want to spawn a tractor if I don't need it. All right, I do need the tractor. And then I was short cash to be able to spawn a tractor and a new trailer, so I'll go shag the trailer. I know some people don't think that you can do good stuff with the with ground vehicles in game, but you really can. And you know, again, it's kind of like you just have to work on the systems and make them work fine. But you can make some really good ground vehicles in game. You know, and that I don't know why infinite electricity is on. And it's a really economical way to do it because, like, this truck's reasonably expensive, but it's not that bad. It's 20 grand, and you can go do some container missions with that. So say 40 grand for a truck and a trailer that can go do a bunch of missions for you. I got a bunch of downvotes on Reddit, which I thought was pretty silly for saying exactly what the problem was, you know, you know, when people have tires spinning all the time, essentially what it's doing is, you know, ideally the devs would make it a one-to-one realism to real life, but the problem becomes a lot of people don't know how real life works for obvious reasons. You know, they don't do that for a job. They might be, you know, a young kid who's never driven a car before. And so they're doing, you know, they don't necessarily know some of these things, and especially they don't know the minutia of, you know, like professional applications of this type of stuff. And so one of the things is in game, the devs apparently did it to make it easier for people where the tire will slip both with too much torque, which is how it does it in real life. So for example, if you have a really powerful car and you just mash down the accelerator without a traction control system, the wheel's going to spin up because the amount of force it requires to break traction on the tire, you exceed. So you get, boom, you get a spinning tire. All right. Now, in real life, when you upshift too quick and you're in too high of a gear, let's say we try to start from a stop in 5th gear, it's not going to spin the tire. You don't have enough torque. It's going to stall the motor. But then you get a bunch of people complaining that, oh my God, my car stalls. Right. And so I would say the devs did this to make it easier, quote unquote, for people where instead the tire will slip in both ways. So instead of stalling your engine, you just smoke the tire. Either if it's, you know, too high of a gear or too low of a gear, essentially, where IRL, it would just do it if it was too low of a gear. Just listen for the backup alarm. And so, you know, I would say that was why the devs did that. And yes, it does make it easier for a lot of people, but it's also can be confusing when you're trying to consider how things are done IRL. That's high beam. Where's work light? Work light. You know, how things are done IRL. And so the easiest way to fix smoke and tires in game is to put a proper transmission in there where... I'm not in my seat. Right. Where what you do what you do in real life, right? You have a proper transmission, and it can never get out of the band where it is has the ideal rev range. And so that's why, like, none of my shit really smokes tires, because I have the ideal rev range, and it never leaves that ideal rev range. Let me make sure this is going to release the brakes here. Okay, good. So see how it's a negative number? So that's what it's doing, is it's putting in negative brakes. We're good. All right. So like somebody was complaining about, you know, on Reddit, they said their tires are smoking. I said, you know, put in a proper transmission. And that's the answer, is if you have a proper transmission, like this is putting huge amount of torque to the tires when it's in first gear. But it's within the right rev range, so it's not breaking traction. You know, and so you don't get smoking tires. And as I go through here, you see I can give it a little smoke when that's a shift to a higher gear too early. Now in real life that wouldn't happen. It would bog the engine down. You'd actually slow down. But it would be confusing for a lot of people who don't understand this. And so it's like, once you understand that, like watch my transmission tutorial and you can see how easy it is to put a proper transmission using real numbers from real transmissions in real life, and just have a working car that operates in all ranges correctly and behaves properly. You know, so you can actually utilize that realistic numbers from, you know, like I show in the transmission tutorial. Oh, shit, I bashed into that like crazy. You know, like I go when I take a Ford Focus, which is a tiny car, and I go ahead and I use the numbers for that, and it works on a small car. I put the right numbers in for a big truck, and it works for a big truck. You know, I put in something intermediary for a transmission, and it works for that, like a box truck. You know, and so you can utilize those real life numbers, and it makes it so you don't have to do all the research yourself. You can use the research, you know, people have done IRL. And this is smoking because, see my tire going crazy, because the stability system there has been damaged. So that's why the tire's freaking out, is it's not a game thing, it's my stability system. That's why the light's flashing, is because I have damage. It has nothing to do with, you know, that's a me problem, is I bashed into something and the system that's controlling the stability on that wheel is now damaged. So one block I would like to see is a combiner. I could probably actually do it. I'll have to look at it to combine composite. That's why we're having this problem here too, is just I bashed a bunch of electrical stuff. All right, so putting the truck back in the workbench, and then we have the trailer, right? And so we should get, this is 2250. And so right now we have 956, and because I spawned this as a separate entity, I should be able to despawn it, and we should get that in our base. There it is, 3206, perfect. And let's go ahead and save it, and we'll do 6. Make sure the autosave stops. I think the other thing too is when people have some computers that like are not great, like, they have real slow memory, they're safe. It takes too long for them, and the problem becomes that you know, the meatball spins and they go do something else and it corrupts the save. You see how fast mine is? That's because I have, you know, all my computer components good. That would be my guess. Again, I don't know too much about this shit, but all right. So that's 2250 coal. Alright, and spawning these separately instead of spawning it together, now I can despawn this truck if I wanted to or needed to. and I can also so I can despawn this truck if I want to, and keep the trailer in the world because they're now separate spawns essentially. So this should be filling the reservoir tank. See it filling the reservoir tank pressure. The brake can should be, it's got some residual pressure. Is the blowout blowing out still? Why is the blowout valve blowing out? Okay, now it's not. Okay, I gotta change that. That shouldn't be like that. Yeah, it's a little funky. I gotta change that. Because that wouldn't happen IRL. You would, because it's not like some electrical signal telling the parking brake to be on, which is how I have to almost do it in game through the light cord. It would be the actual absence of the pressure on one side of the system, because you have two hoses, brake, you have service and emergency. And I didn't put an extra hose because the piping is much bigger in game than it would be IRL, so it's hard to get it all in there. The other cool thing with this trailer is to dump this trailer. It uses actual hydraulic pressure, so you pump, in this case, diesel, which I use for hydraulics, or I use slurry. Sometimes I use slurry just because you always have a supply of slurry. It just puts it in there automatically. You don't have to go get slurry. So I'll just use slurry as a, so that, you know, I don't have to like use some diesel supply to put in hydraulic fluid. But it actually pumps the hydraulic fluid, and once the pressure is high enough, it will actuate the piston that lifts the trailer up. So kind of a cool thing you can do with the pressure update is simulate hydraulics. Ah, you sucker. So this is called high centering, what we just did there. So if you ever see like a truck that got stuck on railroad tracks, and you're like, why doesn't he just pull up? That's why they can't just pull up, is they've literally got the landing gear sitting on the hill. And so there'll be signs at railroad crossings that say like high center risk or warning high center. And so if you don't crank your landing gear up enough, what happens is as the truck goes down, the landing gear gets caught on the hill, and then you're stuck there because all the weight's pushing down on the landing gear. And so that's why a lot of trucks get hit by trains, is one, they don't crank their landing gear up high enough, and two, they, they get hung up and they high center. So yeah, I gotta fix that. Like, you can hear it going off now. The blowout valve is blowing out when it shouldn't be. Oh, I gotta go back to work lights. This is one of the benefits of having like a tractor trailer setup here is it just, you can see how like we can drop off new trailers and just makes it much easier to switch it out. It's very modular. Because you can see how we can very quickly put a new storage unit on here, and if we're playing multiplayer, you know, you bring up a fresh trailer and that person can go and start working again, you know. Clear there. All right, good. All right, back into drilling here. And because the park brake's on, this is constantly pissing out air. That shouldn't happen. I gotta fix that. So one thing I could do that would be kind of an interesting way to do this, I'm actually gonna write this down because this would be neat, is so essentially you like so you like say, how do I know when the light cord is connected? The light cord, you wouldn't do it through the light cord IRL. What you'd do is you'd do it through the air hose, just having pressure. Trying to think. I could try it with a delta V, so this could be for trailer park brake. Trailer park brake. Could do delta V of pressure. That's one. We could also do it with the light cord. And essentially what you do is you send a signal. So say send signal. And then no signal, park state. So if essentially what would happen is if there was no light cord plug-in, it would send it would say, hey, you're parked, go to a park state, which would do the blowout valve. But I'd have to play with it, see how I like it. I'm gonna need a refuel. I'm just gonna keep giving myself free fuel with the mini truck at this point because the problem is, the problem we run into is currently at our at the scale that we're operating, it's gonna be hard to make profit on coal at all because we did all that work. We have all this equipment. We burned quite a bit of, not tons of fuel, but a good bit of fuel for all of $5,000 worth of money. So really the coal is not worth a ton of money, and so we need a lot of input costs. We really need to scale up to where we're moving huge quantities of coal to make it profitable. So to help keep it profitable, I'm gonna go ahead and keep giving myself fuel. Because that's going to be our biggest cost right now is fuel. Because I think I figured it out, it was something like 1,900 liters of diesel is what we put in these vehicles with the last fuel truck. And so you're talking, that's $2 per liter of diesel, so you're talking about 4,000, and we just made 5,000, so we're not making really that much profit off of this. And so while, like, I don't really care too much about the profit, I more care about fun per minute than dollars per minute, I would like to make it viable so that we can keep doing our longer term goals. Try to read some chat here. I'm driving around with this. Yeah, like Rasmus talked about, it has fast memory, and I think those of us with some pretty fast memory are not having some of those save problems that people are having. How's it going, Sergeant? Good to see you. So many of the problems can be like derived down to the system issues, or like, you know, you'll ask some of these people, like, oh, I have like 28 mods installed, and it's like, there we go. You know, there certainly are game issues, but it's like, a lot of them are like, can be distilled down to system issues and that. Like, people talk about having crashes all the time. I've been having crashes recently, but like, one of the new driver updates pretty much helped that out, I think. So that was, you know, that's on Microsoft or NVIDIA, depending on which drivers it was, if it was Windows drivers or if it was graphics drivers. See, like, the other thing, too, is, like, I don't need to gamify this loader where it has a light that tells me it's full. I can hear the change in the engine when the drills stop, and that's kind of my indicator that, hey, we're full. And then again, with a manual transmission, I just downshift, and it limits my speed. You see how the loader slows down because of... you know, I put it in first gear, so it can only go as fast as first gear because the engine is now acting as a brake. That's what they mean by engine braking, right? So you shift down, now your tires are going to be slowing down your engine. Your engine has mass and momentum, so it adds a braking force to it. Do this. So that's what engine braking is all about. So we did some engine braking there. We're just downshift into first. We might need fuel in this, I gotta see. I don't have a fuel gauge, I don't think, here. Engine temp's good. Let's see what's up with this. No high temp. Why are we eating up so much battery? I don't know. Let's do that. Do that. That'll help. I would say it's probably fuel. Let's go ahead and fill up. Alright, add-on editor. Coal mine fuel. Test. There's my little man. Put some fuel in this. I think my engine's either barely turning or not turning. Ah, brakes on? Oh, yeah, I don't have the brakes on. There go the drills. Alright. This could use an update, especially now we have Flexi, because like I would like, see how I have a bunch of ducting in there? And the ducts have to actually touch the vacuum to be able to go through there, and then the same here. So that takes up an enormous amount of space that I could hopefully put a bigger engine in this. And yes, it will use up more fuel, but it will also be much faster. And I don't necessarily need it to use more fuel. I can make the engine overpowered and really, you know, I can make the engine overpowered and, you know, use less of its potential, and that will make it so it's not that fuel hungry, actually. My new excavator, or my new loader, if you've seen it, the big one, the 992, that one fills its bucket incredibly fast, and it's that's going to be very good for open pit mining and end game stuff. And so this one's pretty fast. You can see it doesn't take that long to fill up, but it's 108 per fill, and I can't remember what the big one is, but it's got a big capacity, so it's it scales really well with my bigger mining equipment. A little bit further up. But I love this machine. I'm glad to get back in this. I want to make a different brand for this. It's got a different yellow. So, got a kind of interesting. Some of my vehicles have that color and some have the other color. So, I kind of like having different brands. I'll leave this here for now. We'll get some more fuel in that. We'll check where I'm at here as far as how much we have in the back of the trailer. It's a 693. I think it would be nice if the devs did kind of an economics pass update and really made the prices work a little bit better. And I think one thing they could do with coal is coal could use $1 per ore boost, because at $3 per unit, one trailer is now worth, let's see, 7,500, no, 7,250. 7,250. So it's now worth 7,250 for a trailer instead of 5,000. So that helps. That would make it a little bit more viable as a way to make money. How are we looking here? Keep that going. So what we'll do here is, before I get off, we'll actually go sell this. Not the best spot to sell, but we'll go ahead and we'll get this sold. Ideally, you would want to get to really high quantities of coal stored before we do it, so that it makes the trip more worth our while and time. But also, I get antsy and I want to go do a different type of gameplay. We only have 14,000. I'm going to say we don't have the money to launch the helicopter to go do some passive income on diesel. We still have a lot of diesel sitting in our base here. Like that's 13,325 and that's 13,9. So we have like 26,000 liters of diesel. It's worth $3. That's $78,000 we have sitting there as a liquid asset we can cash in on later. So, all right, what are we looking at here? Could just shut this off too. That would help. This doesn't burn that much. Doesn't burn that much. Just sitting. Still going. Good. It's on a dry patch now. So. There we go. You can see it's drilling faster now because that ore patch isn't as depleted. Good to see you, Sergeant, even if you're busy. I'm gonna go grab a quick coffee. I'll be right back. Let me move this. This is starting. You see how slowly it's starting to go, so it needs to be moved on the patch. So this has a terrain following feature. So with terrain follow, if you go up and down hills, the drills will follow the hills, so that's kind of cool. So you can drive around with this and you don't have to worry about bashing your drills in. They'll automatically start to rise up if the terrain starts coming up. To a certain extent, you know, you still gotta be a little careful. I'm gonna go grab coffee. I'll be right back. I was reluctant to get a wireless headset for some time, but it's kind of digging it because I can still listen to what's going on in the game or whatever I'm doing while I'm in the other room, which is kind of nice. Send this message. I see where we're at here. About 50% full. You see how quickly those are being eaten up? Because there's not much there. And so that's why like it's not an infinite resource. They come back slowly over time, which I think is the right decision for them to make. And then you want to move on to a different spot. So you don't just sit there and make an infinite money generator, which I think is lame as shit. It's like all the people who were doing infinite money generators for crab. It was like that's lame as shit. It's like you know, it's like we talked about yesterday. It's like if you can easily print money, then like you start to lose motivation to do things because so much of that is like the rewarding feeling of like, oh, I finally earned enough money to get my new building game, and then I want to put a helicopter in my new home ship. Oh, well, that's going to cost me another 30 grand. We got to go make 30 grand, you know, so it gives you a reason to go do these things. You'd see how few people would go to work if they didn't, you know, if they didn't need the money. Yeah, I'd still go to work. I like work, but might not go as often as I do. Yeah, there's a good balance of having kind of the stationary miner doing a good bit of the work, and then me actually like having to sit here and do some physical work, of actually driving around and picking spots. It makes for, I think, better gameplay. Because kind of just sitting there and watching this gets real boring because like I'm literally not doing anything. I'm just watching it, and so me getting out, driving the loader, it gives me some good interaction. Now we got to jackknife this trailer a little bit. We want to be careful on that. Yeah, so this gives me a little bit better mix of gameplay here. But yeah, this definitely could use an upgrade where all that ducting there can go, and we can put in essentially right at the back of this, we can put a flex duct that goes all the way to the base of this. And then that frees up space for a bigger engine that I can under stress. And these drills move at a pretty good rate. We're doing 1.4 RPS. The loader there, I think they're around 4 RPS. And it's got one drill. So the two drills on this are pretty much have an output about the same as that loader. Outrider, radio for help 9,000, 3 casualties in the hospital. I would like a little bit of cash. Yeah, like if people want to cheat in single player, I have no problem with it. It's like, you want to print money, you want to make some auto crab thing that just sits there and makes billions of dollars a second, I've got no problem with it. You can go in your XML file and edit it. Got no problem with that either. It's just, I just find it to be completely friggin' lame. It's like, because I often see the same people are, then they're bored. It's like, of course you're bored. You know, there's no consequence to anything. Like, if you make a bad decision in game and you lose a boat and it sinks, well, you've lost a lot of capital, and so it teaches you not to do that mistake again, you know. It gives it some weight, you know. All right, let's go. I think, what do I want to do here? Let's see where we're at fill-wise here. All right, 14. Alright, so you hear the stuttering, that's overheat. That's what that is, overheating. And so it's real simple to not quote-unquote fix, because now that's stuttering, if you look at the drill speed, it's gone down by about, you know, it was 1.4, it goes down to about 1.1 now because of that, so you've lost about a third of your drilling efficiency, but that's all it really takes to keep it from burning up. So this could use a new motor. Some new systems, because now with the flexible tubes, they've done some really fantastic updates in the last while here, so I'm really kind of thrilled with the way that the devs have been putting out updates. Let's go ahead and let's drive this back to base. Hopefully we have enough fuel. Famous last words, I know. You know, they've done some really great updates. Like, going through them, like, you can go through week by week, or month by month is what they've been doing now. Which, you know, I wouldn't say I was against going to a month by month thing. I did like hearing from them every 2 weeks. It made it feel more engaging. But then you had detractors who were constantly in there like, what's the point? This isn't an update. This is just, you know, nonsense. They're just talking. Well, it's like, that's called outreach to your community, you know. And so I could see the devs kind of getting frustrated. Like, you know, we spent our time on a Friday right before work ends to make sure that we came out with something for the community, and a bunch of people complain. Let's just do it when we have something tangible to, you know, say to people. And I get that as well, you know. But I did like hearing from them every week, you know. It's kind of nice, something to look forward to, some new information. Now they pretty much, you know, once a month they come out with like, hey, this is a new update. And I don't think that's a bad system. And, you know, if they at some point want to go back to more frequent updates, they can do that. But this also works well too, you know. That's like Derail Valley, which is a fantastic game. They pretty much like, they keep their mouth shut for like a year. And then they do a big update. And I'm not a huge fan of that, because the problem is I think it's too easy for a community to step away when there's no new content. And then, like, once people get out of the habit of playing the game, it's easy for people to never come back. And so that's why I think a frequent update, you know, to keep people engaged and excited is important. I think Stormworks would benefit again from having some DLC. Like, you can look on SteamDB and the highest player counts and spikes were after every DLC, despite people crying they don't like DLCs. Well, you see the high player count, well, that means people bought the DLCs and played it, you know, and played with the new content. And so I'm sure that like if you could see the micro spikes when like some of this new stuff has come out, like flex belts, flex ammo belts, um, it's the new content that brings people back. So I would like to see them do a DLC at some point. You know, um, they might be working on the new game and not have time to do a DLC, but I think a DLC would be good. It's been some years since they've had a DLC. I think there's plenty they could do. They could do a farming DLC. Um, I think like just call it a harvesting DLC where they have farming. You can do forestry, stuff like that. I think would be good. The price they ask for it, $10. Like, man, if you don't have $10 in your pocket to pay for your entertainment, like, that I get it, but it's like you're not entitled to free entertainment, man. You really aren't. And $10 is more than reasonable. Like, I know I make more than probably most people, but it's like asking $10, like, it's hard to go get lunch for $10, and I've definitely gotten more fun than a lunch out of the DLCs. Each DLC, It's just people get real cheap. And it's like, that's a good way to have your hobbies die is, you're not willing to pay for them. Well, guess what? That's not profitable and they stop doing it. I doubt I've ridden my motorcycles as much as I've played this game and spent a lot of money on my motorcycles. This is pretty fuel efficient when you're not drilling. The drill really eats it up, and that's why I made it so that in first and second gear only it drills. Personally, I just drill in first gear, but I just kick it up to third. The speed difference is only a couple miles an hour, so kicking it into third really isn't going much faster. Just kicking it into third. I'll try to get a picture at the top of this hill with the hangar in the way. Right. Yeah, I think getting cheap with your hobbies is a great way for like them to be unprofitable for a company, and then you don't have the hobby anymore, And like some of the hobbies like are incredibly expensive, but great hobbies. Like I would love to get into 3D printing. Well, like a good 3D printer now is probably like say $1,600 to $2,000, and then you have to buy the filament, and you know, this is pretty damn cheap. Like they had all the games on sale for what? I think it was like $30, $50 maybe at most for the game and all the DLCs. Recently, and it's like, even if you got 100 hours of that, that's 100 hours of gameplay, which is pretty low for a game. That's 50 cents of entertainment per hour. That's pretty damn cheap. But for some reason, gamers like to get real cheap and wonder why their hobby doesn't have some of the things that other hobbies have. It's because you got to pay for these things. My motorcycle jacket costs $4. What? Four times what I've spent on this game, just for my jacket. I have multiple jackets. My latest jacket. Like we had 30 something, just over 30 gallons of fuel, and we're down only a few gallons here. Like let's say maximum 10 gallons we burn in this, so it'll be 30 liters, so $60 for me to get down here to the base. So that's pretty reasonable price-wise. I did work on the low loader trailer yesterday, and I'm going to add T-TIS Mark II now that I've kind of got that fixed up a little bit. And we'll add T-TIS Mark II to the low loader, so that's on the current system. And then, so part of the reason why the loader doesn't go 60 miles an hour is, one, it's not realistic. It would need more transmission, more gears as well, so it'd take up more space. but also it gives you an incentive to get your tractor out and a low loader and then bring it up via tractor. And then it kind of gives you an incentive to, hey, instead of mining for 10 minutes, I'm going to go, and it's going to take me a while to get all my mining gear up to the mountain, so let's mine for a while. And then, because the transpo takes you X number of minutes, and so it kind of informs how long you want to game for, because you're like, oh, it took me a while to get everything up there, let's mine for a while, and then we'll bring the stuff back. What else we got up there? We got the stationary miner, and we've got the tractor pretty much up there. It's out of fuel. Probably. Let's fill this up while I bring the tractor back. Because this has such a small motor, I can't quickly get through the gears. I have to actually like rev out the gears like you would on a real little something with a small engine. You just don't have the torque for it. You have to kind of drive it like you would something small. Now we'll get that going. Let's go get the tractor and bring that back to base. Get it stored up. Yeah, Bamboo Lab. Yeah, that's the one I would want to get. The new Bamboo Labs are pretty cool. Like some of them have laser cutters built into them and routers and all that. Milling machines. It's kind of interesting, but the Bamboo Lab seems like they've finally got it kind of. It's more of a complete project, which I think's cool. Like a bunch of them really were pretty bare bones, and you had to do a ton of work to get them to like work, and that didn't appeal to me, you know? You know, I would want to just be able to quickly like print something. You know, like before you had to used to have to like really like work your machine and change out parts, and you know, it's like any new technology, it's going to take that. Alright, this is going to the chemical plant for 1,000. It's not worth a ton of money, but that should be pretty quick for us. It apparently has no brakes in there. But this is kind of cool. I was kind of poo-pooing these trailers because I thought I was going to have to convert my shit to the other system, but it looks like I don't have to, so I'm actually a little bit... That's what I thought somebody had said. It was on the, whatever that other standard is. And so I didn't really want to do that. I think the devs could add, we talked about this before, like add back impellers with essentially valves in them, so that like right now that's how it used to be, and that's why we could make things like turbos where the exhaust gas would turn the RPS connection, And so what I'd like to see them do is add a second set of impellers that do the same, do that. So for example, you can use a pump, and you can pump fluid through the fluid side, and it would turn the RPS side. And then you could essentially make pneumatic and hydraulic drives. You can make turbos. And then the other benefit of that would be, for example, something like what I want to do here, where I want to have a pneumatic pump off the engine. I could use an impeller instead of using this small motor, and I can use it off the RPS connection of the engine like it would be. But the problem is I also have to put a valve. So what was reasonably compact is now very not compact, because the valve is a 2x1, and so you have to stick the impeller on the end of that at some orientation. So now it becomes very large and cumbersome, and that's why I have a small electric motor in there, is just because of how cumbersome it is. I would like to see the devs make a 1x1 electric pump. Right now this current pump does 11 point something atmospheres. The big one does 60. I would like them to make the current quote-unquote small one do, say, 30 atmospheres, and then make the small one do 11.5. And that way you'd have a good range. Or bump up the big one so it can do even higher PSI. I keep saying PSIs, I mean atmospheres. I think that would be a cool way to add some parts that would have functionality. And the more 1x1 parts you make, the cooler builds you can make, because you can miniaturize stuff. And you lose some pressure, but for most applications we don't need enormous pressure. We really just don't. Yeah, what kind of DLCs would you guys like to see in the game? Because I think a DLC is something that would be definitely, well deserved and merited. I think it would help bring some of the community back, having some new gameplay. Some people are just they don't stick with something, which is fine. They'd rather go play a game for a little while, go play something different for a little while, and they come back when there's new content. And yes, some of these monthly updates have added good content, but for example, one of them, which was great, was the adding folders so you can better organize your builds. But I doubt that's going to make people come back who might be looking for new parts and content and inspiration to build something new. But you add some new parts, that brings somebody back. So if you added a bunch of hydrostatic parts, or fluid parts like I was talking about, that could bring some people back, where they're like, oh, I'm going to make some skid steers, I'm going to make some this and that and the other thing. And that can really inspire people to make some new builds, I think that's where it's best, is when you add some new parts and content like that. I think one of these monthly updates, I really like them to see them tackle the logistics problem, or the economy problems that are in the game. I think coal needs to be bumped up $1 per ore. I think gold needs a big bump up, because gold requires so many steps in the process. You really need to make gold profitable. And right now it's just so time consuming that it would have to be very, very profitable to make all the time consuming steps worth your while. And it's such a late game thing, because it requires so many different tools, that I'm trying not to drive with this fox. Hello, fox. So one thing you could do is, if gold's profitable enough, you could go out there with small, I've talked about how I'd like to see 1x1 ducting, and then a 1x3 drill. And that way you can make some really tiny stuff, like skid steer drills. And once you do that, you're going to be able to Okay, there it is. You're going to be able to do it. I was barely moving. Christ. I do not have anything to put this out. I should have a fire extinguisher there. I don't think I do. I was barely moving when I hit that fucking thing. Fuck, that's a fake one. Alright. That's why I keep no clip on for bullshit. I might have to make 2 trips here. So my truck needs a fire extinguisher. Let's we know that now. This is why I put on that custom menu, is like that would be frustrating. And so instead of getting pissed off about it, just like there's no clip away and just fix it. Where's my build? There it is. Okay, good. The trailer disappeared because it was considered delivered. Fire put itself out. Okay, I gotta fix this. So that got delivered, so we got our money for it. So you see how like the doors are closed and it's not showing buy? That's how the world, it despawns stuff when you're not near it. Oh, stop it. Pressing the wrong button. Yes, there's a bunch of logistic stuff. I would like to see them economic stuff. I'd like to see them tackle. Where if they'd go do that and, you know, increase the value of gold. Christ, keep breaking ankles. Stuff like that I think would be really beneficial. I think they need to work on oil so that, like, for example, the Arctic, you've got really, you know, a lot of oil. It's easy to get to, and it's copious quantities of oil, but the problem then becomes, you know, there's not a lot of people up there, so they don't need the oil, and it comes cheap. So then you want to bring that oil down south to sell it. You make huge profit, but it's a big time sink. And so you got to put a lot of time into oil from the Arctic. I think that would be good. You know, fish. I think they need to have some areas like the Arctic is really, really good for fishing, but it's but again, there's not a lot of people in the Arctic. So Sawyer Islands has not great fish, but they have a lot of people who want fish. So that makes it so that, yeah, you're going to go to areas where you can get better fish, bring them to Sawyer, and it makes the travel cost worthwhile. I think they kind of, I get why they change the fish, and I get people's complaints when they had fishing problems. If you don't remember back when some of the fishing came out, the problem was that you had to go, like, potentially you might have to sail for an hour to get out to good fishing grounds where there's good profitable fish, and people didn't want to spend that much time, which I get, and I think that's reasonable. But the problem was they made it so, like, it's too close now, and so, like, one thing you could do is you say, I'm just going to put my park brake on so I don't crash. But, like, for example, like right here, right, there's a fish seller. And so the closer you are to the fish seller, right, the less profitable the fish should be because your time is worth something, right? So if you put a fishing node right here, that's awesome. Somebody buys this base, they have a tiny little fishing boat, and they go out here and they catch some fish and they go right back and sell it. And so somebody who has an hour to play today, and that's all they can play, that's their only game time, they could come down here, go out fish for a little bit, go back, sell some fish, save, and they had some fun during their hour. right? But they didn't make a ton of money. So they have a small boat. It's good early game. Then the fish out here that's a little bit further away, right? It's worth more money. And so you say that the fish sellers that are on the island with people, right? Those pay the highest prices for fish. So you get the highest price for fish here and here and here, wherever there is a lot of people, right? Down here, there's less people, so you're going to get less money for the fish down here. So yes, you could fish here and sell the fish right here, but you're going to make more money if you bring it up here, right? And then you have the best, most profitable fish up here, but there's not a lot of people here. So yeah, you got a lot of great fish up here, but you don't get that much money selling it here because there's no people that live up here. But if you put that on an airplane and fly it down here, you get big profit. And so, like, you go up here and you get lobster and snow crab, right? That's the Arctic. And you get lobster and snow crab, and you can sell it here for like almost nothing. It's like $1 a crab. Or you could take it, put it on a plane, fly it down to somewhere in the Sawyer Islands, say fly it here to O'Neill, put it on a truck, drive it up here, and you make $50 to $100 per crab or lobster. Well, now it's worth your while to do all that. And it gives you a reason to build an airplane. It gives you a reason to build a truck. It gives you a reason to build all these cool things. So that's some of the economic stuff I think they could do where it adds gameplay and it adds depth and complexity. And, you know, I would say it's not that hard because all they're really doing is you're saying this fish seller at this location pays, you know, 1/10 for the fish. You know, any fish that is close to that fish seller, I think they should segregate lobster to cold waters because that's where lobster would be IRL. Snow crab should only be in the Arctic, period. You want to go get snow crab, it's the most profitable crab, you have to go to the Arctic. You get some junky mud crab, yeah, you can get it right off the shore here, but you don't get much per unit, you know. And the further it is away from the place, you put a simple multiplier, like, say the Arctic has a population of 10, and the population on Sawyer is 100, and the population on any of the Meyer places is 50. And so, you know, and then you put a multiplier on, you could do it just like that, or you could also do, you know, snow crab, for example, is going to net you $2 per snow crab where there are snow crab, and then you're going to multiply it by 10, which is the population, you know, and then so it'll be, what is it, $2 times 10, $20 per snow crab up in the Arctic. You then go down to Sawyer, it's now $2 times, you know, 100, right? So you're getting, what did I say, $2 times 100, or 2 or 20, what did I say? You know, so it'd be $200 per snow crab if it was 2 by 100. You know, or it'd be $100 per snow crab to bring it to the arid biome. You know, because you have fewer people living there, so the demand is lower, right? So something like that would be a good way to do it. I think they could really step into industrial stuff again, where Sargent's talked about this, was an idea that I agree with, is put a console in at the at what some of these shit, be careful, brakes, okay. Put a console in at some of these factories or cargo stations and order up the cargo you want to transport. So you want to move a pallet of X, Y, or Z. Let's say it's a pallet of metal. Well, it's going to be very heavy. So it's incredibly heavy, this pallet of metal. So you need to have something that can carry it. Maybe a truck or a train is a better choice than a plane. You know, but you could have something that's lightweight and fragile, like, say, you know, chandeliers, and it looks like a box on a pallet, and you order up the box and the pallet, and you put a little G meter in there and a microcontroller, and if the G's get too high, it gets damaged and you don't get as much money. You know, something like that would be kind of cool. I think it would be cool if, like, for example, you deliver steel to the factory, and once the steel has enough factory, you have the option to turn it into steel plate, and into I-beams, and they already have some I-beams in game, and essentially like I-beams you would have to load onto a trailer one by one. You might make a giant I-beam, and a giant I-beam you have to like put on a big trailer. That would be a lot of fun. They could even do things like put enough aluminum into a factory, and you can spawn an airplane wing that you have to load onto the back of a truck and bring the airplane wing to a hangar somewhere. That sort of stuff would be really cool. It adds some cool complexity to stuff. All right, let's save up. All right, let's see what time is it. All right, we'll probably finish up here. That was fun. Got a lot done there. Still need to bring the miner down, but we got most of our equipment down. We'll bring that down. That was somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,000. So we're looking at about 5,000 coal. Not a lot of money, 10,000. But now, we can do a quick train run down and sell it. So that was not super profitable, but coal is that way. I want to we saved, so let's go up here real quick. We have a coal sell place here. I've never looked at the coal mine up here. Be interested to see that. Where is there a coal mine up here? Okay, that's where you make propellant. Oil gantry, sell oil here for $1. And stuff like the Arctic, for example, there's not a lot of people living in the Arctic, but the demand is very high. So, for example, like, let's talk like logistics real quick here. So, like, for example, there's some problems with a lot of the mining, and I think they could fix these. So you have iron here. You go up, you get iron. It's quite a ways to get iron somewhere. So you got to put it on a train. Train goes down. You go in here and you put the iron in here, and you either get iron ingots or you get you can mix coal and iron to get steel. And then you go over here and you go to Screeches and you sell it. I'm not a huge fan of this. I think this is kind of silly, frankly. Here, it's a pain in the ass as well. You have to get a way to dump your trains onto a truck to be able to sell it into these silly depositories. I think what they should do is move all of these here. Let's just do this. I already saved, so. I would like them to move these underneath the train, essentially. So right here you have these, and they're kind of in a silly spot anyway, right? Like, look, there's no way you're getting a loader here next to them, so you got to drive in the dirt. It's pretty silly. You could put these underneath the train, and I think that would be better, right? Put it underneath the train right here, and that would make it so you can drive the train over and you can sell the goods. That's where I think what they should do. Move those over here. Simple fix there. There's some cool looking shit here. Like, if you look, we have these aluminum rods, whatever they're made out of. We've got some maybe bar stock, some flat stock here, right? Maybe that's wood, I don't know. But this is kind of a cool concept. And then, so say this place would convert it into, I don't know, you can pick up like bar stock and shit like that. Even if you can buy the bar stock, you can buy the I-beams. I think that's cool. And then if you go down the street just a little bit, you have this factory, right? And it looks like they were actually kind of thinking of some of these things, because you see some of them have spouts, but you have a factory down here. And so, ooh, this is, I'm not going to pick this up, but you would bring it down to the factory and you put the whatever the material is in the factory. And so say you bring I-beams, or you bring sheets of metal, and then those components build something else. So like you would then be able to spawn computers, and it would be a pallet of computers, right? And a pallet of computers would now go to a store. And so what they could do is in city centers, right? Because right now you don't have any real towns or much townage. They could add just like a place for you to bring some of the stuff. I'm trying to find where there's a town. Like here's a town. And you put a store, right? And you have just a store and you bring the pallet of computers. And so the way this works is it kind of scales down, right? Let me bring up Paint real quick. And a lot of games do this well. Like even Farming Sim, there are a ton of mods that did this well. And they could really do this to add some depth to the game. So let's see. And so if you go ahead and you say, all right, so when we start out, right, we end up getting a huge amount of a commodity, right? Let's see, filled rectangle, that's good. And then let's go, doesn't matter. So you get your first commodity. So let's say that's iron, right? And then you need to get a ton of iron ore, and then it goes down by 100th. So that's how much iron. So that's iron ore, and then you're gonna get iron ingots, right? Iron ingots, you're getting that much iron ingots, right? And then you take the iron ingots and you turn it into steel, right? And so you need an equal amount of coal, and you take these two here, right? And those turn into steel, and that's gonna be a smaller portion there, right? And then you get your steel, and then you go and you turn your steel into I-beams, right? And then or flat plate. Let's say it's plate. And then your plate gets turned into something else. Let's say industrial equipment, right? So now your industrial equipment is a small pallet of industrial equipment. So you have huge amount of iron ore goes into a smaller amount of iron ingots, and coal, which makes steel, which you turn into plate, which you turn into a final product, which is industrial machinery. And so you could make something that looks like an engine, say, for example, on a pallet. And that engine is going to be worth the most, right? So if you just sell this, you're getting whatever it is, 10 bucks. You sell this, you're getting... So you sell this, you're getting 10. Christ on a cracker, what's going on? So here you get that $10 per unit. This here is now $20 per unit. This here is $40 per unit. This here is $80 per unit. And this here is $160 per unit. So you could sell at any point in this process. If you don't want to dedicate the time, you can kind of take an off-ramp of like, okay, we're going to sell, and I'm not going to go ahead and spend all this time. Okay, I'm just going to sell this. I have my fun. The fun that I have is actually mining. I don't like trains. So you say, okay, I'm just going to take a bunch of iron ore, bring it down there, and I'm going to turn it into money. That's what I like to do. Okay, well, or you could go and you could bring it to here. And so you mined coal, you converted the iron, and now, bingo, you get steel. You go take the steel, you sell it here, right? And that's where you decide you want to make your money. You might want to take it one step further and you sell it here. You don't want to go through the process of this. Or you go all the way to here, you make a finalized product, and this is where you choose to sell it. Now, this is going to be your greatest payday, but you have to go through all this time, and each section here is time. So T here, you're adding up all your time. And this might interest you because, for example, you know, this is all mining equipment, and you like to mine, so you just mine it, put it on a train, sell it. That gets you back to mining quicker, and that's what you like to do. You might love trains too, so this gets it to the point where it's mining, training. You have to do trains, you have to do trains, you have to do trains, and then you go get this, and then you put this on a truck, and you have to drive it to a town. And if you like to do all these things, or you like the little bit of, you know, variability, now by the time you're here, right, you might be getting that itch to go mine again. And you want to go mine, and so you can kind of get off any point you want, and you can stay on. And that's really good gameplay doing it that way, because it lets you kind of stack and make more profit per unit. So like, you know, right here, this might get you 10 per unit, and this is 10K units, right? So it'd be 10 times 10K, right? So that's 100,000, right, for all that work. and then you turn it over here, right, and it's smaller, but it's still more profitable. And then finally you get to here, and let's say this is going to be 1.6 million, right? So like say this is 1.6 million. And so this is a lot more. This is 16 times what this is, right? But it took a lot of time to get to this point. So you now have $1.6 million worth of computers or industrial machinery or whatever. And one thing they could do to make this a lot of fun is, and make the world feel more alive, which is what people have often asked for, is you put something like a construction site. And so industrial machinery has to go to a construction site. You know, industrial machinery might have to go to the power plant where it's a component for the nuclear power plant. So you actually want to go to the nuclear power plant and you deliver industrial machinery here. And that's why you're making big money. So you get a $1.6 million payday. You know, but you tie your money up for a long period of time. So that's end game stuff. You know, and so going back into what's not end game, you know, early gameplay might be you mine, you sell, you mine, you sell, you mine, you sell. Now you got enough money to mine and sell and turn it into this, and mine and sell and turn it into this, and mine and sell and turn it into this. And so each step you take the off ramp, you sell it, but as you get more equipment and you get more efficient, now you finally get to the goal of let's go ahead and let's make the final product. And you could do this with other stuff too. We don't have copper, unfortunately, in the game, but like you do aluminum, right? You turn aluminum into computers, right? Turn aluminum into computers, and then you can put that on a truck and you sell it somewhere. So computers, where are you going to want to sell computers? Well, you sell computers maybe up in one of the towns, right? So you have Holt Town, and Holt Town needs computers, right? So you maybe bring them to here or wherever. You sell computers. What is, oh, radiation? I am nowhere near there, guy. I'm getting killed by radiation here. No longer. So, like, you sell computers here, so you actually have to put them on a truck. And the benefit of this is, of course, the amount of aluminum ore to build a couple pallets of computers is going to be huge, like the size of a train, right? But you've already converted that down into something smaller, which is aluminum ingots, which take up a lot less space. And then that gets converted down into sheets of aluminum. And those sheets of aluminum go to the final factory, which they get stamped into computer cases. And now you're bringing final computers here. And so, yes, it took you a whole train load of aluminum ore, but by the end of it, you have a small box truck with 2 pallets of computers, and you make big money. You know, that's, I think, a cool way to operate. I think that's a lot of fun to do it that way. And I think they could add that, you know, I always say reasonably easy. You know, I have no clue how easy it actually is. But, you know, I think they could do that pretty reliably because all you really need to do is put a console in some of these factories, which they've already put in the game, right? They don't have to build them now. But you, like, go to Karn factories, right? We have a factory here. And you can build computers. So if you put in a certain amount of aluminum sheet into this, you go up to your console and you say, I want computers. And I want a pallet of computers, and I want that pallet of computers, and it shows you that a pallet of computers is needed at Holt Town. There's 2 pallet of computers that need to go to the fishing village. There's you know, a pallet of computers that needs to go somewhere else. The military base, of course, might buy some military shit, you know, so maybe a pallet of battle cannon extensions or something, or make something look like a gun that you bring to the military base, or ammunition you bring to the military base. So you need stuff for that. And then maybe like the research outpost here needs a pallet of computers. Well, it's a long way away, so you get really good profit off that. You know, there's a bunch of cool shit around here, like the survey base might need computers or something else. I think they could do this with food, too, when we talk about farming. there is a farm already in the game. And so if they added farming to the game, sure, is it right here? If they added farming to the game, well, certain places are going to pay top dollar for food, right? The area around here is not going to pay top dollar for food. Why? Because it's right here. So your time expenditure is very short to go from Holt to the farm, Holt to the farm, Holt to the farm, Holt to the farm. So you might get a small amount of money every time you go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But you go down here, well, this is further away. So you make more money going back and forth here because it's a greater distance. And then you're going to make even more money going down here, right? Because now maybe you put it on a truck, you bring it to the airport, you fly it down here. You need to put it on a truck to get it to one of the towns, right? And that gives you that extra step. And now you're using your trucks, you're using your harvesting equipment for farming, and you're using your planes, and then you're reversing it with trucks again. And then doing things like, for example, you put an absolute ton of farm stuff, say corn or whatever, wheat, whatever they want to call it, farm goods. You put it on a train, you bring it down to a facility, which, do they have a factory here? That's just a parking lot. Oh, I didn't see the sawmill. When did they put the sawmill in? See, these are some hints that I'm kind of optimistic about because I didn't know about the sawmill. It could just be because of this shit, but, like, this would be awesome to, like, feed this sawmill some trees, and it gives you these products, So that's the sort of shit that I think they could do. To really, like, and they might have this shit in mind already, like, we have no clue. But I think these are cool now that I know that I can use my trucks on them, so. Alright, so those are just some of my ideas. I think the game is very much vibrant and alive and could be even more vibrant and alive, and I think they're doing a really good job of adding stuff. And I see a lot of people who, like, think that it's dying. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think they, for obvious reasons, have to spend most of their time on their new game. That makes sense to me just because it's like, they have to have the next thing going. Every business has to have the next thing going or they go out of business. It's really pretty basic economics. If they don't have the next thing coming down the pike, then if the game died tomorrow, then the whole business is out of business. If they have the next thing going, I also wanted to look at, I've seen a lot of nonsense again in some of people's comments of how, oh, look, the player base is dying. That's the max view time right there. And so if you look at this, it's a pretty flat line. Like if you look at here, that's the 2.5. That's about where it sits. These big peaks, guess what? DLCs. These big peaks were DLCs. And so that's one of the reasons why I say, you know how you get the player base to jump back in for a little while? You put out some DLCs. And when people cry that nobody wants DLCs, bullshit. People want DLCs because we can tell by the player base jumps are the times when they had DLCs. And so I think a DLC is prime for right around here. Put a DLC in here, a new DLC. Maybe they even have one in the works. I doubt it. But I think that would be good. But, you can see it's pretty much flat. If we saw it down here, that would be concerning, because like literally you had the doom and gloomers were like here, like, oh, look, it's on a downturn. The game's dying and bingo, look, it popped back up, went back down, went back up, and it's seasonal. Like, it's seasonal when people get out of school. It's seasonal when people might have some extra time to play in January where they're still on winter break, but they're not going to their families for the holidays and, not playing, So, I think the game's doing pretty well. I think the new updates have been fantastic. I think there's a lot more they can do, and I hope they do it. I wish they were working on a stormworks 2, not stormworks 2, just because I think you have that player base already in there who would jump on it. But you run into some pitfalls where you have to make the game so much better. You have to fix a ton of the problems that were already in the game. It makes it pretty treacherous for them to have to do that. So I kind of get that it's a complicated situation. I trust they can figure out what the hell they're doing. All right, I'm going to read some chat, and then we'll finish up. Yeah, it's like Rasmus talked about with, our little talk about, cheating. Like, if you're playing single player, there's no such thing as cheating, right? You want to give yourself, like, if you don't like playing with small, basic vehicles, and you just built a cool build that cost you $100,000 to spawn, and you're playing by yourself, there's nothing wrong with giving yourself the $100,000 so you can play at the level you want to. You don't always have to start from zero, right? That becomes a problem when you're in multiplayer, but playing single player, there's no issue with it. Let's see. Bought a Bamboo Lab A1 for 450. Okay, the 450 one's good. Yeah. Yeah, map editor would be cool. I think that would be a cool feature. I've talked multiple times about how I would love to have an island about this size down here, have the best fishing here, so I have to put it on a plane and fly it away. And I think if they just did that simple math where the closer the fishing spot is to a fish seller, the less money you're going to get. I think that's a good way to do it so that, if it's right here, yes, it very quickly you can go get a bunch of junk fish and you can get maybe 100,000 fish real quick over a couple hours. But they don't pay very well. Or you go out further, out to here, and yes, the trip is longer, but it might take you 40 minutes to get out here, 40 minutes out here, 40 minutes to get back. And yes, you've made more profit because it took more time. But, I think that's a good idea to do it too. And I think they could do that pretty simply. Yeah, map editor would be cool for that. Oh, interesting. The suspension wheels? That's interesting. How's it going there, Jay? All right, guys. I think we're going to finish up there. I got some other stuff to do today, but had a lot of fun streaming, working on some of these builds. Yeah, I was hoping it wasn't going to take that long to fix the T-TIS, but I did figure out what the issue was, so that's good. We got that kind of licked, and then it'd be nice to get back into some of those systems. I'll put them on the workshop for you guys. I might leave it unlisted and just put it in the Discord. Or I'll just put it up. I don't give a shit. I'll just put it up on the workshop as well. I would love to have a challenge again. So if we ever get a challenge, that would be cool. I'd like to participate in that. But yeah, it's been fun. So if you liked the video, give it a like. If you're new and you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. And I'll see you guys next one.